As you said, a small issue happens and spouse reaches to final ending divorce despite of several approach and making her understand, yet every time small or petty issue happens, again the talk reaches towards divorce. Please note, spouse is a revert Muslim.
This is the problem when basically you have too much heat and too much emotion has gone on. And so what happens is every time a small spark comes in, it lights the fire again. And the whole thing starts, and they reconcile and they put the fire out, but it's still burning hot. And as soon as one small spark comes, the fire starts again. And so what is happening is these small issues are burning up the marriage and are causing the problem to reoccur again and again and again. I think there are a couple of points that I would like to make on this. And the first thing is that whenever there's too much heat, you need to take that heat out of the situation. So they need to maybe, take a little time to think about what they're saying, to try not to allow this situation to escalate so much and so quickly in such a short time. And there are many things that a person can do to stop a problem from escalating. And we talked about not jumping from one step to the next. One thing that they can do to stop the problem from escalating is just each party being aware of what they say, thinking before you speak. That the concept of like having a stone in your mouth. You have to remove the stone before you say something. So you imagine you have an imaginary rock in your mouth. Before you can say anything on any topic, you have to reach into your mouth and remove the rock. So it takes time, 10 seconds, 5 seconds before you think about what you're going to say. The second is recognize when your blood is boiling and don't speak when your blood is boiling. When you recognize the anger level is going up, walk out. Say, I'll come back in a moment inshallah. Go and make wudu, go and pray 2 rak'ah. Go and take some time out to call upon Allah, to cry to Allah, to ask Allah, to make dua to Allah. Don't allow yourself to let your blood boil. Because what happens is, this blood boils. Another thing which I think is really important is, don't bring up the past. Because usually when these small things are reigniting the problem, it's because the past is being brought up again and again. And the wife, she has a set of arguments, she knows, if I say this, it's going to turn into a burning fire. And the husband has a set of arguments, he knows, if I say this, it's going to turn into a burning fire. All she has to do is say, you remember that time your parents came? And that's it, it starts again. And so what they have to do is they have to really remember not to bring the past up again. And I think this comes down to something I wanted to talk about, which is the ayah, which is when we talked about إِن يُرِيدَ إِصْلَاحًا يُوَفِّقِ اللَّهُ بَيْنَهُمَا. If they really want reconciliation, Allah will give them the success to have it. But you have to want it. And if you want it, you have to be willing to let things go. And really, these first few days after these big arguments is the most dangerous time, because this is the time when the heat is very high. And taking some time out, spending some time outside, going to the masjid, just maybe keeping a little bit separate for a few hours, just to let things calm down. And then when things have come down, and I think the Shaykh mentioned a story from the Prophet ﷺ like this, going out to the prayer, and he came back from the prayer, and the situation had calmed down. So sometimes you have to try to take the heat out, and you have to stop pouring fuel on the fire. Because if you're pouring fuel on the fire, it's only going to get hotter. At some point you have to be very, very careful about what you say, and be very careful about letting your anger get the better of you, and plenty of seeking refuge from the shaitan. As Allah Azza wa Jalla said, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ اتَّقَوْا إِذَا مَسَّهُمْ طَائِفٌ مِّنَ الشَّيْطَانِ تَذَكَّرُوا فَإِذَا هُمْ مُبْصِرُونَ. I always say to people that marrying a revert is something which requires a great amount of patience and a great amount of ihtisab, of expecting the reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because the reality of it is that this person is, to some extent or another, relatively new in Islam. And they have lived a life as a person prior to Islam. So they are bringing some baggage with them that takes time for them to overcome. And they also are not coming from the same cultural experience as that person. And cultural experience can cause some discord, as it did between the Sahaba radiallahu anhum in certain circumstances. So the reality is that when you're married to a revert, you have to have a lot of patience with that. You have to expect the reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for helping them to grow as a Muslim. And you have to be so careful about their iman, because your iman can be very fragile. As Allah Azza wa Jal told the Bedouins, قالت الأعراب آمنا قل لم تؤمنوا ولكن قولوا أسلمنا ولما يدخل الإيمان في قلوبكم. The Bedouins say that we have believed. Say you have not believed, but you have become Muslim and iman has not yet become firm in your heart. So these were a people who, yes, they had taken some steps, but they had not become very firm. And so, depending on how long the person has been in Islam, it can be a fragile time, and it needs a lot of patience and a lot of expecting the reward from Allah. And just on that last topic, I'll just touch for a couple of seconds on the virtue of al-ihtisab, of expecting Allah to reward you. Don't ever think that Allah doesn't know the patience you have, or that Allah doesn't know how much you are concealing your anger. Al-Kadhimin wal-Kadhimin al-Ghayz wal-Afina 'anil nas. Those people who they conceal their anger and they forgive people's mistakes. Allah Azza wa Jal knows when you are doing this, and you will be rewarded for it. So expect the reward from Allah, and remember the reward you will get from Allah at that time when it becomes difficult, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best.
Jazakumullah khair.